This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Agon Chodesh, Freilchen Chanukah. So today's breakfast is sponsored by Rabbi Glatstein in honor of Chanukah, Rosh Chodesh, and the whole Kehillah. And so today is, there are a lot of reasons for Simcha today. First of all, today is Rosh Chodesh. Second of all, today is Chanukah. And for me, there's a third reason, because I see my dear friend Rabbi Schwartz from Norfolk, Virginia, who we communicate, come out every single day. But for those listeners or those in the shul may not know, Rabbi Gedalia has been disseminating the Shiurim for many years. I don't know, maybe almost 10 years or close to that. And he puts in tremendous avodah. And I don't know how he does it around the clock. So for me, it's a triple simcha. It's Rosh Chodesh, it's Chanukah, and I get to see my dear friend Rabbi Gedalia. So the learning should be in his honor as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Zos Hanukkah, the 8th day of Chanukah. You know, it's interesting that Avudraham brings down that there are those who have a custom not to do malacha on the first day of Chanukah and not to do malacha on the 8th day of Chanukah. Some people don't do malacha the whole year, but for those who do malacha during the course of the year, there are those who don't do malacha on the first day of Chanukah and on the 8th day. So that's something we have to try to understand. Bishlam of the first day of Chanukah, that's the day they rested from the war. You know, that's the day they won the war. So I can understand the first day of Chanukah special. Something happened on the first day of Chanukah. It's Chanu b'Chavhei. They rested on the 25th. So rested on the 25th, I can understand there's no malach on the first day. But what happened on the 8th day of Chanukah? What's special on Zos Hanukkah? Historically, did anything happen on Zos Hanukkah that it should be a day of Yom Tif? That's the question we're gonna try to deal with today. So off the bat, we could provide a new answer. We know that there's a very important connection between Yaakov Avinu and Chanukah. Yaakov Avinu passed away, who knows? What day did Yaakov Avinu pass away? On Sukkot, very good. On Teshuva Tishrei. However, it says they embalmed him for 40 days and they cried for him for another 30 days. So his Avelos ended 70 days after Teshuva Tishrei. So let's take it 2 months and 10 days. Cheshvan, right, from Tishrei to Cheshvan, then to Kislev, and then an additional 10 days, so that takes you from Teshuva Tishrei to Chafhei, Kislev. So Yaakov Avinu's mourning was over on the first day of Chanukah. But then they mourned him for 7 days. And then they buried him on the next day. So Yaakov Avinu was nikbar on Zos Hanukkah. So is that a reason to have a Yom Tif? Well, we know that when upon the demise of a tzaddik, it's the Yom HaDehilula, especially on the day of the Kavura. So maybe that's significance to Zos Hanukkah. In the past, we've said over that there's a very strong connection between Chanukah and the Yom HaNoram. I heard from my grandfather, Zechatzak Levracha, Toshev Enosh Ad Daka. You could do tshuva until Daka. Daled Chaf Aleph, the 25th day of Kislev. You could still do tshuva until the 25th day of Kislev. In fact, the Sefer B'nai Binyamin brings down from Rab David of Dinov, who heard from his great father, the B'nai Yisachar, that there's a hand that comes down in Hashamayim, and it's being makabel your tshuva. That hand continues until Chaf Hei Kislev. In other words, the days of tshuva continue until Chaf Hei Kislev. So you say, well, but not Zos Hanukkah. Well, we know there's an idea that all 8 days of Hanukkah are latent in the first day, because it says, B'chaf Hei B'Kislev, Temanya Yoimei de Chanukah Inan. 8 days of Hanukkah are in the first day of Hanukkah. All 8 days are in the first day. So if you could do tshuva until Hanukkah, you could do tshuva until Zos Hanukkah. By the way, it's interesting, the gematria of Matisyahu is 861, the same gematria as Rosh Hashanah. Also, how many hours in Chanukah? 8 times 24. It's 192. What Parsha do we read before Rosh Hashanah? Nitzavim. Nitzavim is gematria 192. Okay. So let's try to explain a little bit the inyan of Zos Hanukkah. In the past we've said over. We know we have different Parshiyot that we read around the Zman of Teshuva. We have Vayilech, which is 30 days. That represents the Teshuva of Tzadikim Gemurim. They do Teshuva from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Rosh Hashanah, 30 days. Then you have people who it takes a little bit longer until Yom Kippur. It takes them 40 days. So we have Parshas Nitzavim, which is 40 psukim. That represents the Teshuva of Beinanim, who it takes them 40 days to do Teshuva. Some people it takes them a little bit longer to do Teshuva. It takes them 52 days to do Teshuva. That's Parshas Ha'azinu. Some people it takes them till Shmini Atzeres. Ha'azinu is 52 psukim. So it's interesting. You have Vayilech is 30. That's for tzaddikim. You have Nitzavim, which is 40. It's for Beinanim. You have Ha'azinu, which is 52. That's for people it takes them a bit longer. Says Rav Moshe Wolfson, if you add up 30, 40, and 52, it gets 122. What's 122? 122 days from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Zos Hanukkah. You hear that? Menorah. So you have 30 days of Teshuva, Tzadikim. 40 days of Teshuva, that's Vayelach. 40 days, Nitzavim, Beinanim. 52, those take longer. Then you have 122, or Rav Moshe Wolfson brings down from his son-in-law, Kisava is 122 psukim. So all of these various psukim correspond to different modes of Teshuva. So Rav Moshe Wolfson asks, what do you do with V'zos HaBracha, which is another 41? He says, well, we don't read that on Shabbos, so it doesn't count. But we once explained, actually if you add 41 days to Zos Hanukkah, it gets you to Tu B'Shvat, and the people who really takes them a long time to do Teshuva, they wait till Tu B'Shvat. Okay, let's try to explain what exactly happened on Zos Hanukkah that there are those who don't do Malacha on Zos Hanukkah. So, what does a Jew have to do every day of Chanukah? They have to ask themselves a question. You know what the question is? My Chanukah! My! What's my? What's Chanukah? It's a very important question to ask. Most people, well, what's Chanukah? Chanukah is donuts. And you're not yotzei if you get the donut with the hole in it, because then you're missing like 20% of the donut. You have to get a donut, and it's not enough, it should be whole with custard inside. They have to put something on top of it. By the way, you know how expensive that thing that they put on top? Just with the custard is $2.99. And they put on top, a wafer on top, it's now $7.99 or $8.99. So that's a very important, but to many people it's not Chanukah until they consume high caloric round discs. No, that's not Chanukah. What's Chanukah? Chanukah is the Yevanim wanted lahashkicham Torasecha. So Chanukah is to be mechazik in limud Torah. That's why on Shabbos we took out 3 Sifrei Torah to be marbe b'limud Torah. Even today, the Yetzer Hara wanted us only to take out 1 Sefer Torah. No, we're going to take out 2 Sifrei Torah anyway. So we have to be marbe b'Torah. Every day you have to ask yourselves, my Chanukah. What's the gematria of my? I heard this from a Rav in Chicago. I met him at a wedding, who's my uncle's mechutin's brother-in-law. He told me over from Rav Shiur, who said it over from his brother. My! What's the gematria of my? Mem Aleph Yud. 51. You got that? My. How many days do you have to ask yourself my? 8 days. What's 51 times 8? 408. Zos! If you ask yourself for 8 days, my Chanukah, my Chanukah, my Chanukah, my Chanukah, the answer will be, now you got a Chanukah. Zos. You know what Zos Chanukah is? You know what it is? It is if you were asking yourself every single day, my Chanukah, what is Chanukah all about? What am I supposed to do on Chanukah? What's the objective of Chanukah? What's the focus of Chanukah? If you ask yourself for 8 days, my Chanukah, then you have an answer. The answer is Zos Hanukkah. Zos Hanukkah is 408. That is, if somebody asks themselves for 8 days, my Chanukah. Last night I saw for the first time from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, what is the significance of Zos Hanukkah? He says like this, what is the reason why Chanukah is 8 days? Because the menorah lasted for 8 days. Why did it have to last for 8 days? Anybody know?
17. That's when we got the new oil.
It burned for 8 days. Why did it have to burn for 8 days? Why did it have to? Why didn't it burn for 5.5 days? Or 10 days? Why did it have to burn for 8 days? What? Very good. What's your first name again? Nachi. Nachi's saying very good. That's the amount of time it took to take oil. To make new oil. Why? Because where they have to make the oil, in whose chelek? Chelek of Asher. Asher, may Asher Shmeina Lachmai. The Baal Turim even says that on the words, Baruch Mibanim Asher. Baruch Mibanim Asher Yehi Ritzui. Mibanim Asher Yehi Ritzui is Rosh Teva's Meir, because from there the light of the menorah emanated. So it took them 4 days. Anybody know where was Asher? Which city in Asher made the oil? Tekaya. So it took them 4 days to get there, and then to produce it, and then 4 days to come back. However, there's another answer brought in the Rishonim. They were Tamei Meis. How many days did it take them to purify themselves from the ashes of the Paraduma? How long is the process? It's a 7-day process. They sprinkle themselves on the 3rd day. They sprinkle themselves on the 7th day. So now, on the 8th day, they're tahar. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, for 7 days, they were tamei, and the oil was tamei. On the 8th day, the menorah is now tahar. It's the first time they have a menorah which is tahar, through Kaihanim Tahirim. So on the 8th day of Chanukah, that's the first time Klal Yisrael were elevated to the status of tahara. And therefore that's the chashivas of Zos Hanukkah, because the tahara of Klal Yisrael was restored. But I think we could add to that, because I saw another idea from the Belzer Rebbe, Rabbi Yisachar Dov of Belz, because I don't really understand that answer fully. So why did the oil have to burn for 8 days? It should have only burned for 7 days, and on the 8th day they're tahar. So why couldn't they? I guess it took 1 day to produce tahar oil. That answer is going to have to say that it took 1 day to produce the tahar oil, because even though they were tahar, they still didn't have oil. Because if they had oil, then the menorah didn't have to burn for 8 days. It could have burned for 7 days. But Rabbi Yisachar Dov says like this. When the Klal Yisrael experienced the miracle of Chanukah, it was a nes. When a miracle happens, you have to bring a carbon. What carbon do you have to bring? Korban Todah. On what day did Klal Yisrael bring the Korban Todah for the miracle of Chanukah? Well, they couldn't be makravit until the 8th day, because the Mizbeach was nigmar on the 8th day. Now the Gemara in Pesachim says that on the day that you bring a carbon, it's a Yom Tif. By the way, that's the reason why we don't say Tachnan on the first 12 days of Nisan, because on each day one of the Nesiim brought their karbanos, and on the day you bring a carbon, it's a Yom Tif. That's why we don't do Malach on Erev Pesach, because we brought the Korban Pesach, it's a Yom Tif. So what day did Klal Yisrael bring the Korban Todah for the miracle of Chanukah? Well, since the Mizbeach was completed on the 8th day, says the Belzer Rebbe, they probably brought the Korban Todah on day 8. And therefore, that's the basis of the minhag brought in the Avudraham not to do malacha on the 8th day. And some have a custom that on Zos Hanukkah they say the mizmar of Mizmar L'Soida. What does Mizmar L'Soida have to do with Chanukah? What does that have to do with Zos Hanukkah? According to this, very beautiful. That's the day that Klal Yisrael brought the Korban Todah for the miracle of Chanukah. So we very quickly said many different important facets of Zos Hanukkah. Number 1, Yaakov Avinu was buried on Zos Hanukkah. Number 2, Zos Hanukkah. If you ask yourselves for 8 days, my Chanukah, my, then you get Zos. By the way, what's the gematria of my? 51. How many days of Teshuva are there? There are 51 days of Teshuva from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Hoshana Rabbah. On Zos Hanukkah, you could be misakein that if you didn't take advantage of those 51 days, you could rectify that on Zos Hanukkah, the 51 days of Mai of Rosh Chodesh Elul until Hoshana Rabbah. Then we said over that Zos Hanukkah is the day that Klal Yisrael were purified after being Tamei Meis for 7 days. Plus, on Zos Hanukkah, the Belzer Rebbe says that's when Klal Yisrael brought the Korban Todah for the miracle of Chanukah. So, we have another day to take advantage of all the Kedusha and the Oros of this holy Yom Tif. And I wish everybody a Freilichen Chanukah, Agon Chodesh, and have a wonderful day. Shkayach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.